And welcome back, Cosmic Family, to another episode of the Self Healing Journey with your host, Dr. Charlie Trinh. And today I'm excited to be sharing the idea of chee. What is chee and how do we cultivate it in our body? So I'm really excited about this concept because chee is one of those metaphors, nebulous idea of energy that both the East and West has been trying to label and trying to categorize what it does, but it's just so much more encompassing, right? So we'll kind of try to break it down into the East and West. And so let's talk about what we're going to cover today. We're going to cover the idea of energy in the West and how the different forms of energy works with the physical body. And then we go into kind of how the body manages this voltage of electricity. How does it stay optimized? And then finally, we talk about this whole idea of pathology and how does, chi excess or chi deficiency causes some kind of issue in the body and how do we address it in acupuncture? And then finally, the most important part is how do we cultivate the chi, the energy within us, keeping it balanced so that we are running the most efficient version of our bodies with the mind, okay? So the first part is energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form into another. And so this is kind of really beautiful concept in energy in the West here that we can kind of encompass what energy is in the East, right? So we have this idea of electric energy where we believe that electrons are passing from one atom to another, and that movement of electron causes this electrical current. And then we have thermal energy, where the thermic energy between atoms is able to pick up energy and creates kind of more distance, but it's storing up really heat, right? Temperature energy. And then finally, kinetic energies, when all these energies are able to move some kind of system, give it movements such as our physical bodies through the muscles, then we talk more about kinetic energy. And so this is kind of one way of describing chi, or the metaphor of energy in the body. But these three character traits are the most obvious ones that we use in our body that are pretty simple in explaining it through physics terms. And so in our body, there's other means of experiencing energy in the body. So some of the electrical way we experience bodies is in the heart. We have the EKG machines that can calculate and figure out the electrical pulses, right? And so these are actually electrical signals. And even when we see an AED, this little machine that you put on people when you don't get a pulse, and it sends an electrical shock to revive the heart, that's using electricity to send into the heart to allow an electrical impulse to wire up and to make the heart work again. And so that shows right there that we are electrical beings, right? Because not just that, but you also know that if you're wearing any jewelry on your body, that will affect the EKG. So that means that the body itself is a conductor of electricity. And then all of our cells actually has something called the mitochondria, most of our cells. So the mitochondria is this powerhouse in our cells that creates extra ATP from all these kind of crazy calcium, potassium, shift in polarity that causes electricity, or this extra ATP that is generated from the mitochondria. And so all the cells in our body has this mitochondria energy, so that means that every cell has a potential to create electrical energy. And then we have iron in our body, which is really important because this whole idea that iron is a conductor to electrical currents, and the fact that there's iron in our blood means that there is an electrical relationship between the blood and energy. And so in a traditional Eastern medicine, we say chi is a commander to the blood, meaning that it commands the blood to move, but the blood is the mother of chi. So without blood or iron, the electricity is possibly not able to move. And so it shows that blood itself is, in essence, a conductor of electricity with the iron in it. And so just these three concepts shows that we are running an electrical system. And then this electrical system gives us kinetic power, right? Because this is now where we're able to send electricity into the muscles for them to actually contract and contrast to allow us to move our bodies, right? And that's being done through the nervous system. And the nervous system is also an electrical system that is sending electrical impulses down to our fingers. When we touch something, it sends us back to the brain. And so we're seeing electricity sending inputs and outputs from our body to our brain and back into our hands or our feet, and obviously goes into our organs. And this is kind of where TCM goes further, is imagine if these organs basically had their own electrical battery, right? And so when any organ fails to function correctly, it's just kind of like how you have flashlights, and when the battery runs out on a flashlight, you don't have any light left, right? And so because of that, the function of flashlight diminishes because there's not enough electrical battery inside this flashlight. Same as if any of your organs is not able to get this electrical energy from your body, then the function of that said element actually decreases. And so those are the things that we watch for is, are your lungs lacking electricity, causing it to have coughing fits, right? So those are the things that we look for with electricity. And we'll go into a little bit more thermal energy, but all we all know that thermal energy is definitely in our body, right? When we say we are inflamed, inflammations means something is on fire. And when that's on fire, it's electricity going through it and causing this heat, this buildup of heat, similar to light bulbs, okay? So we'll get to that in a bit. But the next piece that's really important is actually in physics, this is a all or nothing concept. Is there's no such thing as electricity without magnetism, and there's no such thing as magnetism without electricity. And so in traditional Eastern medicine, you can see it as yin yang, right? Electricity is the element of yin that is moving through physical energy, while yang is this magnetism that is invisible, but yet is still very present in our energetic field that causes this attraction or repulsion between two people, right? And so isn't it really interesting that the magnetic field that we tend to have, most people have, is about 6 feet? And so isn't it really interesting when two people come about 6 feet from each other and closer, what happened is the energetic forms start to connect. And so now suddenly two energetic systems are connected before you even touch someone, right? Just to show that actually we do not need to touch each other to actually be able to share information through our auric field. So it's really a powerful concept. But I wanted to go back to this idea again, electromagnetism, right? And so I don't know if you guys ever studied in physics, it's called the right-hand rule. So wherever the thumb is pointing at, it is electrical energy going through, but then this kind of wrapping of these fingers around the thumb causes a magnetic field. So if we had these electrical wiring, electricity going through our hands, right, then you would kind of have this electric field around the hand. And so when you have electricity running through the whole body, what does this electric field look like? And so you guys probably even heard of heart math or heart science when they actually look at the heart and how the heart is slightly different from all the other organs, but what it generates is more than just blood. It's not just pumping blood, okay? The heart is way more powerful both in esoteric concepts, where it is considered the emperor of our thoughts and our soul, but it's also generating neurons. It's actually connected to neurons, and neurons are also electric, right? That's why we have some kind of sinusoidal wave, SAE or SNA, I forget the term, but in our heart, there's a little electrical impulse that creates the heartbeats, right? And so from there, if our heart itself was just creating electricity, it would actually create, as you can see here, these electromagnetic fields, this blue one and this yellow one showing two people creating this magnetic field around them because electricity is moving so abundantly through them. And so this is this deeper conversation where in esoteric concept, We talk about in spiritual. Some people like to say in the New Age, but really the Buddhists, the Hindus, the Eastern philosophers and religious people understood the concept of auric field and magnetism before modern science. I think modern science is actually catching up, y'all. So let's be real, because this is really important that our ancestors already understood the power of magnetism and was already working with them in kind of different modalities. Today, we finally have a machine that can capture possibly we've been capturing magnetic information for a long time, but we have chosen not to see the magnetic field around our body for some reason. Okay. So if we go a little further deeper into this is kind of the idea of the aura. And so in traditional Eastern medicine, we work both with electricity and the auric field, right? And we'll go deeper into what that means. But this is now the concept of chakras, right? And so in this whole idea that people have been really gaslighting chakras and the whole concept of these magnetic vortexes around our bodies, is kind of why I think many of us have not been able to find the true ways of healing ourselves through the mind, body, and spirit, right? Because if you're only fixing the electrical circuit, but you don't realize there's a magnetic circuit that is affecting us as well, then you're only seeing 50% of the problem, right? Similarly to the idea of religion. There's only men in that space, and a lot of the women are not paid attention to, right? Again, 50% of the conversation is looked at. So when we talk about chee and we don't talk about the magnetic field, we're again missing 50% of the conversation. This is very important because a lot of times people like to say TCM is pseudoscience because what? Because you haven't figured out how to use your instruments to record what we are proving in Eastern medicine, right? So that's really the biggest frustration for me is like they have tools, but they choose not to use those tools to correlate the things that we have recognized in a lot of our older traditions, like the auric field or the magnetic field. Okay, so another concept is these magnetic field become weaker, and when they become weaker, you actually have things that can come into the body, right? And so when your magnetic fields are weaker, this is kind of, people have talked about this, energy vampires. When people are just taxing you and pulling your energetic field and you're not able to like say, hey, hold up, I do not approve of this. A lot of times that's an emotional reaction to the magnetic deficiencies that we're having that's causing someone to get into our field and is able to pull energy from us, right? And so this idea when we get sick could be both that the electrical current and the magnetic current are actually so depleted that it allows things to get into our bodies, right? And so this is this deeper conversation of why it's important to have a strong immunity, which in the Eastern tradition, we talk about strong electricity, strong magnetic field, no viruses, or what like we say, no exterior pathogens, okay? And then the deeper conversation is about visual light and how the whole, you guys all know this, Roy G. Biv, and today the rainbow likes to be pulled and used as something else, but really the whole concept of the spectrum of the rainbow was to represent visible light, that what our eyes in today's society is trained to see is the reflection of these 7 distinct lights that show up only in a very small fraction, 2% fraction of visible spectrum, because anything below, which is the red spectrum, which is the infrared lights, and above, which is the purple lights, or what we call the gamma lights, which tends to look like radiation in modern science, those are not seen by our eyes. And so because of that, 98% of known reality is actually not able to be represented in the visual eye rainbow system, right? And so that's very important to see, because maybe our auric field do not live in this, very small range of visible light. And that's why some of us are able to see, but some of us are not, because most of our eyes are tuned to the visible light spectrum, but not to the infrareds and gamma lights. However, there are some people who are super extra sensitive who are able to see that. And that's possibly why back in the days, our ancients were able to see auric fields, were able to see the movement of chi in our body, and hence why they kind of created these channels, because they saw it in people's bodies. Where today we like to trust our instruments and our eyes so much that we don't really see what is truly happening in our world, right? So it's a very, very important concept, because if you look at this guy here on the left here, you can see that once the electrical currents are moving very smoothly, this magnetic field, the auric field, has multiple layers. And these multiple layers show the depth of this shield. And so this idea that maybe the shields are 7 layers thick, that means that when your 7 chakras that happen to, if you look at it, the chakras follow the spine of the body. And so when our spine is properly aligned, that this electrical current is able to go up our spine and create this bubble of energy around us, 7 layers thick, because there are 7 chakras that are going up and down the spine, causes these layers of magnetic energy to surround our body, being part of our immune system, right? So this goes back to like how powerful our body is to create an immune system that's both electric and magnetic to protect us. Whoa, mind blown, y'all. Okay, so let's go to your next thing to kind of go further into what this actually means to us. And so what's really important is what is electricity in our body and what is magnetic energy in our body. And this whole concept, if you guys probably already heard it, the emotional body is kind of this invisible field that is around our auric field. And that, I believe, is what is the frequency of the magnetic field around you, which represents the emotional body that you tend to have at such moment. So neutrality, when you think about it, when someone's kind of like inner peace, nothing is bothering them from the external reality, you could see that the field might be all 7 chakras are turned on, and so you're getting this white light showing up. And so there isn't one color coming out, because maybe that one color that is excess will start to create an emotion. And that emotion then carries a vibration inside of the body from the magnetic field, right? And so this is kind of important because in traditional Eastern medicine, we will relate we have 6 emotions that we talk about, but these 6 emotions are connected to the 12 organs, the 6 organs times 2 because of yin yang organs. It'll get complicated, but really, as you know, these organs matches the same emotions that we have. So if we go back to this whole idea of optimal voltage of health, right? If your electricity is going through the organs and managing all of their functions, and then they go into the channels. But then now we talk about, where are these channels that people talk about? Well, what if it's part of the fascia layer? This goes into a big rabbit hole that I do not necessarily want to show today, but fascia layer is kind of what is exciting new things to the West, because they used to think it was just a functional wrapper to the body, but they didn't look at the function of it's piezoelectric. That means that it's a liquid crystal, y'all. Liquid crystal is connected to spirit. So when you think about it, imagine that the fascia layer, this whole crystal lattice, piezoelectric tissue around everything in the body. What if that's literally how the spirit is able to embody this fascial layer and send this electrical conductivity into this piezoelectric system that then basically wraps around every part of the body, right? And so I think people used to say, hey, the spirit is anchored somewhere in the body. What if spirit is literally giving the body a giant hug, hugging the body through the fascial layer, bringing a spiritual energy, embodying it into each of the organs, and finally going all the way through to the deep core of our heart and really connecting our spirit with our body, right? such a crazy concept. But this is kind of what I want you all to think about, right? Is what if nothing is wasted in our physical body? And what if everything is as brilliant as I say? That means that our body has self-rejuvenation, self-regenerating ideas and concepts. So where do you get this chi? Well, chi is created from food. And that's why digestion and eating certain foods are so important to the Eastern tradition, because without the right food, you're not generating the right energy. Without that right energy, you're not creating enough energy for your functions of your body. Without that function of the body, low immune system, and then the domino effect goes, right? Another thing too is sleep. Sleep is another way to shut down, right? Just like how at night, all the lights are on in the house, but during the daytime, we turn off the lights, right? We turn off the lights and let the body or the house recover from the amount of electricity we use at night. Same idea as in the daytime, we have so much electricity, we're moving our body, but in the daytime, we need to turn off our body so that all this electricity that's been building up is able to go back into the internal organs and replenish itself so that you're not degrading the physical vessel. And this is kind of why I love this idea that mind over matter is this concept of psychosomatic cells, where cells actually, because of the psychology of you, will adjust their cells particle, right? So in that sense, if we're talking about the psychology of your mind is able to affect the physical body, which there are studies to show this, by the way. One of the most brilliant studies I read was that a person who has basically multiple personality syndrome, certain personalities had cancer that some didn't, meaning the psychology of one mind over another mind in the body will actually recreate the different representation in the body, meaning that the one who might not love themselves and attack themselves, that could create a cancerous or acidic body that causes internal issues. And if you take a picture of their body, you could find that there could be some cancerous cells. But as soon as another mind takes over that body, they have no cancer. I mean, I will leave it at there for you guys to kind of ponder. But we have so much we do not know. So it's really exciting that a lot of us can really take this information and go deeper into what can you do for our body that modern medicine today is not looking into. Okay? So then finally, going back to the power of emotions and how actually managing our emotions manages our chi, right? And so we'll go now into kind of these little head bobber things, right? So scattered chi means being in shock, being so scared. What happens when you're scared, right? Like basically all your energy is moving, but as soon as you get in shock, it's almost like all your energy scatters because they don't know what to do because you're in so much shock. Have you noticed how you're speechless when you're in shock? That's the same idea, is because your chi gets scattered and it's no longer moving. It's like hitting a magnet with a hammer, right? Have you guys known that if you hit a magnet with a hammer constantly, what happens is all the polarized magnets becomes loose and they no longer follow a correct path, causing all the energy to form on the polars ends, right? So that's the idea of scattering chi when we're shocked, when we're so afraid that our chi scatters. And then when we're afraid, our chi actually descends, and that matches with water and how the more water you have, right? And this is why when you're fearing, when you're afraid, you start to get those little cold flush or sweating or anxious sweat. It's because the water is descending, coming out of us, and it's descending and causing us to, when we fear, the energy goes downwards, right? And so we kind of go in our stomach, go, oh my God, I'm so afraid. We kind of bundle up. Versus the opposite is anger. And we all know, and this is why we've seen visuals, but when we get angry, people's heads get red. People say steam comes out of your ears. Your head's going to pop off and blow open. What's happening is literally energy is going up to your head. And that's why you're getting red. There's so much blood in your face because you're sending so much blood to the veins and to the arteries in your face that it causes heat causes it to get hot and causes you to look like you're going to explode, right? And that's the idea of chi rising to the head during anger. And then another one is when you have the slowdown of chi. We see this often when people are overjoyed. Let's say you assume someone was going to pass, and then they come out, and they're like, surprise, we didn't die. Like, for you to process that someone that you've been crying for like 2 weeks is not dead, and you're overjoyed that they're not dead, but you haven't processed what's going on. And so what happens is that energy slows down. We see this they call it in overjoy, chi will start to slow down. And what happens is just because you're so excited that's almost like there's so much energy, but because there's so much energy, everyone has to slow down, right? It's like, hey guys, there's a after Christmas sale on these locations. Suddenly everyone goes out to try to go to that Christmas sale, and chi slows down because everyone's so excited that we're going to get 50% off this Christmas tree. So everyone goes out, but it slows down your chi because you're so overjoyed. And then another one is when we are worrying too much, right? So over worry, and we see it in our spleen, in our stomach, is when we worry too much about things. That's when we're actually stagnating the chi. We're slowing it down. But in slow down, the chi's still moving. In chi stagnation, the chi stopped. This is now... you worry so much that you start causing accidents on the freeway, and these accidents on the freeway have caused all these cars to basically stop because there's accidents that need to get cleaned up. And so chi stagnation is what we experience the most of. People really show up in chi stagnation because that's when you find pain. When there's chi stagnation, things aren't moving, just like in traffic. So when there's traffic that's stopped moving, then you need to pull in the police officers, the ambulance, right? And so for us, we go in and we will try needling to move the chi that has been stagnated in one location. And that's from over worrying. So remember, don't over worry. Sometimes thinking that something's going to happen when it clearly isn't means that you've put all this energy into creating up an invisible future that may not happen. And that energy is just being used up, right? And so chi stagnation is because you're sending so much energy into the future, which is not going to help you. Or the past. People still worry too much about the past and cause chi stagnation. And finally, the last piece is grief or sadness. So just like when we're grieving and when we're sad, a lot of times we're crying. And it's when we're crying that we're actually using up fluids. And when we're using up fluid is connected to chi. So when you're crying, which is fine to cry, we're supposed to if we need to heal. But if you're crying over and over again, then you're actually consuming your chi. And so this is what happens when someone has been crying maybe for over a week. Then you need to have someone come in and say, hey, how can we help you get through this, because your depression is causing you to consume so much chi. So now when you wake up, you don't want to do anything. You're already like depressed. So depression is really the part after you've been grieving and you've been depressed and you've been crying, right? So it's really the consuming of the tears, even when you're crying and no tears come out, you're still like yelling and upset, right? And so that's consuming a lot of chi. And so understanding that the chi in our body is trying to balance so many things. You got 12 organs, you got 2 hands, 2 arms, a head, you got emotions, you got food, you've got sleep, you got the muscles to move. And so chi is used in everything, but depending on what it's necessary for, it will adjust, right? Because emotion is still magnetic. So when you have an emotion, you will affect the electricity within you, causing one of the organs. So any of these emotions, let's say you are over consuming chi because you're crying, that is connected to the lungs. So suddenly you'll start noticing that you might have to every time you cry because your lungs are not depleted. It's no longer able to store all this energy. It's just releasing energy that the lungs cannot store. And so you might have this after you cry a lot, this kind of like slight cough that you're having because the function of the lungs have now become depleted, causing these symptoms of a lung issue. Okay, that was a long one, but very important.